just like that, you are back right here on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It is Expresso on S3. Thank you for joining us. This conversation excites me so much because the power of language to reflect and shape our world is absolutely undeniable. And each year, the Oxford Word of the Year captures a snapshot of the conversations and also the concerns, the joys, the lows that really define us as humans. And this year, the Word of the Year has been revealed. Following an exciting public vote, I need to tell you more about this, but let me introduce you to someone very special, because joining us today to unpack the winning word, the buzzworthy contenders, and what these words actually say about the year we've just lived is Linda Roos, dictionary publisher at Oxford University Press, South Africa. Linda, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be in your stunning studio in the
thank
shadow
you.
of the mountain.
Do you think it's stunning? Thank you. Nobody ever says that. That's fantastic.
And we put up trees for you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Do you find it demure?
Yes, actually, I feel very mindful sitting here.
Thank you so much. We won.
We won.
We're done with the interview. Thank you. That's it.
Very
Thank you, Linda. Goodbye. We'll be back after the... No, I'm kidding. So the Oxford Word of the Year 2024. Now, we've seen these words come through. There's been some interesting ones in the past, but we've sat on this thing called brain rot. Now, we've had some good words this year. Romanticy and demure. There was
And
some
lore
very,
as well.
So there were some good ones. But now we've got this word brain rot.
Wow.
And it had to get up there somewhere. So Linda, unpack for anybody who doesn't know how a word of the year becomes a word of the year. How did brain rot stand on top of the list?
Well, I think it's fascinating to see the journey that took us from, for instance, COVID, pre-COVID, and how we moved past that. And for the first time in quite a few years, we are shifting our focus to something else. Some people may say that, you know, we've moved through the biggest threat in our history, in living memory, a global pandemic. But now we might be facing something that is even more insidious and might even pose a bigger threat to our intellect, to our creativity, to what makes us human.
Wow, and that is brain rot. Can we talk about this phenomenon that's about to happen? I don't even mean to give it a good word like phenomenon, because it is a scary reality. I mean, if we're being honest, we spend so much time on our phones, just consuming social media. Why do you think this really stood out among everything else?
I think we have to look at what it actually encapsulates. I mean, first of all, we've had quite a few questions about why two words, and when you're saying it's Oxford Word of the Year. But for Oxford, it's really about a unit of meaning, and that might be an expression, it might be a group of words, it might not even be a word. If you think back, we've actually in the past had an emoji, which signified, you know, the new emotional content that we're bringing into our online conversations, etc. So brain rot, I've actually brought my handwritten diary as a foil to, you know, bringing in a tablet, for example, the brain rot.
Yes, don't judge us. We listen, we don't judge.
Not at all. So I wanted to read a short sentence coming from where brain rot was first used. That was in the 1850s, and it was used in a novel called Walden by the writer Henry Thoreau.
Yes.
And he said that while England endeavours to cure the potato rot, will not any endeavour to cure the brain rot, which prevails so much more widely and fatally.
Wow.
And I think, you know, that actually brings us to what it entails when we speak of brain rot. Now, as you know, it's about actually consuming content that hasn't really been curated, that might be wrong, for instance, it might be inaccurate, inauthentic, etc. And we just consume that without being critical about it. It's easy to sit back to let AI, especially generative AI, ChatGPT, augmented reality, and so on, to have an impact on us instead of actually engaging with very complex issues. So we tend to simplify what's happening in an online community environment, and this is now spread to the larger community, and it's being absorbed by the mainstream, and it can actually turn around centuries of what we've been engaging with, and is almost it could be a dumbing down of society.
That's the fear, hey?
It's a big fear, but also the word of the year and its contenders for word of the year also can showcase what has happened within a generation or a year. If you look at the other words, I believe it's slop, romanticy, dynamic pricing, brain rot, demure even. And you kind of understand what the year has been like. If you look back at those, you can almost pinpoint each word as a subject line and tell you exactly what happened this year. And I think maybe that's the power in having a word of the year from the Oxford perspective. It also gives you great opportunities to put a spotlight on some of the human condition, like Henry Thoreau, you know, potato rot, but what about the brain rot? And so that's the power of words. Are there any words that stood out to you that you feel has been quite an outlier in terms of what has happened this past year?
Well, I think most people weren't expecting that shift away from COVID-related or pandemic-related words in the past few years.
Yes.
And I think it just signifies that we're ready to take on this new threat that we perceive as such. I think that, you know, if we look at, for example, how we moved through the pandemic, to give us an idea of how words can encapsulate, as you say, our experiences. So in 2019, the pandemic struck towards the end of the year. Our word of the year was still climate emergency. And that was what was first and foremost in global consciousness at the time.
Yes.
But fast forward a year, and we have all these words that have been swirling around trying to make sense of the global pandemic. So our language experts in Oxford decided that it would be unrealistic to use just one word to encapsulate that whole experience. So that was words of an unprecedented year. And we had quite a few of them. Then another year forward, and we see the word of the year as vax. So that shows that we've been battling the pandemic. We have been really trying to bring it under control, and the whole issue was to vax or not to vax. And that debate is still raging. Another year later, and we see that things have moved actually through that stage, and that we're looking at how we are experiencing it in our own lives. The lockdown, people staying at home in their slippers and dressing gowns and not wanting to leave their homes. When things normalized again, there was this big backlash by the public that they didn't want to actually let go of that slothful existence. And the word of the year then was goblin mode.
Hilarious.
And then if you go on, if you see a year later, the word of the year being Riz, it's really showing us that people have realized that, you know, it's okay, it's not so dangerous anymore to get close to people. We can actually think of having romantic relationships again. But have we lost our Riz? So that was almost the cutoff point. And then we see the shift to the impact that AI and new technology has on our lives, permeating almost all areas of our lives.
I love the work that you do. Can I just say that? It's just like telling about the cultural zeitgeist at the time, going through 365 days, which we all do as humanity, and going, this is the word that really reflects your current reality. And whether it's a high or a low, it is something that we need to face together. But I do think that brain rot is so accurate for this year. I mean, when I look online and see the lack of media literacy that people go through, I mean, they just believe everything, including myself sometimes, that we see online without fact-checking. So it is something we need to kind of pay attention to.
It really is. And I want to thank Linda for the wealth of knowledge. We could have chatted for an hour with regard to what words are about, but this is the great thing. We have a vocab, we have an experience, and we get to share that through communication. And we can fill a dictionary with the type of year that we've had, but we do know that they connect us, they challenge us, and sometimes they make us laugh, demure. So here's to more wordy wonders in 2025.